Bienvenido al podcast Daway. Si quieres aprender inglés y hablar como un nativo, estás en el sitio correcto. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a cambiar vidas aprendiendo inglés. Visita nuestra página web daway.es para conocer más sobre nuestros cursos, los cuales incluyen un examen oficial de Language Share tras su finalización. Todos los títulos de Language Share están aceptados a nivel mundial y los puedes realizar desde la comodidad de tu casa.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to another Real Life, Real English podcast. We are joined here today with Aurelia. Aurelia is a teacher here in Murcia. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First things first, I'm a South African. Not that there's anything wrong with being English, Anthony, but accent's very different, personality is very different. A lot of students are quite shocked that they are meeting a South African. They always think, oh, I thought maybe you were American. So no, I'm South African, so that's number one. Number two, I've been living in Murcia for quite a while with Anthony as well. We've known each other for a while. And Murcia is home.
It is home. And just tell us a little bit about your teaching experience.
Sure. Okay, so I first, like most people, in this community of teaching English as a second language or teaching English as a foreign language, sometimes people, they're like, oh, well, I want to travel. And what's the easiest way for an English person to travel? Teach English along the way. And that's how it started. But I always had a love of English and I always did well at English at school. I've always been a reader. I've always, I dove deep, dove. I dove deep into the language for many years, and then had the opportunity to move to Poland. And from South Africa, you from a South African point of view, going into Europe, anywhere in Europe is like, wow, fantastic. But as an African child, Poland is a little bit cold. So I lived in Poland for a year teaching. And then I was like, well, where else in Europe can I go? And I landed up in Murcia. And then I lived in Murcia for a couple of years in the southeast of Spain. And then I went back to South Africa, teaching at the University of Johannesburg, English as a foreign language to international students. But there was a pull on the heartstrings, to come back to Spain. And I've been here back since late 2019, so just before the pandemic. I've been here.
And it's been a journey. You said you obviously you've got a lot of experience teaching in Poland, also in South Africa, and here in Spain. What are the main differences you see in the learning of a foreign language in those countries? Are any ahead of the others?
No. Well, look, Spain is sort of known to have a let's say a lower level of English, purely from a historical background where English was not pushed at school. Most things on TV is dubbed. A lot of people still prefer to watch dubbing just because their brain can relax. It's not so much hard work to focus on subtitles in Spanish and listening in English. But going into Poland, for example, everything is dubbed. And it's more like international music, and everything is sort of more like, although Polish language is obviously still number one, it's more, I don't know how to, what's the word? Let's say they have a better control of English as a second language. But then you go into South Africa, which is a whole different dynamic. But when I was teaching at the university, we taught international students. And as a teacher, that's a completely different vibe, because you can, in Spain, for example, if somebody doesn't know the word, you can explain the word directly, from English to Spanish, right?
Yeah.
And everybody sort of can help each other. But in an international classroom, you have to be on your toes, knowing how to use different ways to explain something, whether it's grammar or vocabulary point or whatever. So for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you, I was actually thinking about this while I was preparing for the podcast, is, there's a level as a teacher that you have to be, you can never get comfortable teaching. Because when you start getting comfortable and lazy, this is when the little crevices of like if you get too comfortable, students get too comfortable, and I just think that that's something that you don't really get in an international class. And I try to keep on my toes, as an expression maybe I would use to say that.
Yeah, I mean, let's stop on that one. Let's explain keep something or someone, on their toes. How would you explain that expression?
Actually, it's come up a few times in class. I don't know how, but if anyone's watching this video on TikTok or on YouTube, or whatever, when someone's playing football, right, or playing basketball, and you can't like stomp and like sort of walk to the place. You have to be attentive and you have to be on your toes, being able to move from point to point. That's similar to, keep someone on their toes or stay on your toes, meaning to be ready, to be attentive, to be
to be alert.
Exactly, any way that you need to. And that's we use it more, what's the word I'm looking for? Figuratively than literally.
Yeah. And then earlier you were saying you dove deep into something.
Yeah.
We couldn't decide whether it's to dive. Obviously, to dive.
Well, I mean, it's dive deep. Usually, exactly.
What is
it's the first time I've used it in the past.
Yeah. Or dove?
Yeah, it's dive
dove. I would say it's both.
I've dived. I dove. I wanted, actually, to be honest, I was going to invent and say divin, and I was like, Aurelia, divin doesn't exist.
That one doesn't sound right.
Dive, dove, divin. Yeah, no. But yeah, it's to dive deep, just to get to the real profundización of something, I guess.
Yeah, to become really enthusiastic and do lots of research into a certain topic. But what we will do at the end of this show, in the comments or in the description, I will put, is it dove, or dive?
Divin?
Dived. Definitely not divin. Definitely not divin.
Yeah, definitely not divin. No, work.
So yeah, for those of you that don't know Aurelia yet, you probably haven't seen her face yet, but you might recognize the voice. It's because Aurelia is actually in charge of the Daway podcast. So it's her voice that you hear every single Thursday when a new episode comes out. And we thought that this would be a really cool way for you to get to know Aurelia, but also have Aurelia talk about something that she's enthusiastic about. And that takes us on to our segment, which is called Real Life, Real English. And Aurelia, you told me you wanted to talk about journaling, which is a hobby of yours. I obviously see a lot of your videos on TikTok with your journaling. Let's give the viewers a quick introduction to what journaling is.
Okay. So it's a very vast, I mean, it sounds so silly that it's journaling, dear diary, but it's actually quite a vast hobby that's grown in the past, let's say 7 years, where in the past, whenever you told someone that you were journaling, it was, dear diary, today I woke up and I had, no. It's not like that. So journaling really is creating time to sit with yourself and intentionally be attentive to where you are at emotionally, mentally, or physically as well. It's basically creating an intentional time to be who you are, where you are, and how you are, and not dismiss. That's a good verb. Not to dismiss anything that you're experiencing at the moment, and sort of it forces you to be present to your life at the moment. And what I think is so great about journaling is that, in 2025, there are so many therapists, and there are so many psychologists, and there are so many coaches, life coaches, this coach, that coach. But sometimes you don't need anybody else. And sometimes you just need to know yourself better. And we are in an age where there are millions of people creating content. It's just TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and it's just we consume and consume and consume, that sometimes you lose your own voice, right? And journaling and all of that, what that entails, another good verb, what that entails is being able to sit with yourself, know yourself, and sort of be present to what you need. Right. So it's there are many aspects to it. You can be, some people are more creative. Like I like to be more creative with my journaling. Other people are more minimalistic and are just like, I need this, 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 and this. But what's great about it is that whatever you need, you create for yourself. And I think that is a very powerful tool to have nowadays.
Okay, so let's go right back to the basics. And what things do you need to start journaling?
You know, everyone is going to try and sell you something, but what it comes down to is a pen and a paper, which is what's so great about it. You know, whether you are going to go and buy a beautiful notebook, if that's what you want, or you want to go and use a notebook that you used to use in high school and there are still pages, you know, available, it doesn't matter. What matters is doing the work, you know, and as you get into it, you know, I actually was on TikTok consuming. I was on TikTok today and I saw a very cool quote that said, it doesn't have to be perfect, just make it exist and it can be better later, right? So it doesn't matter where you start with what you have, where you are, and whether that's a pen and a paper, that's great. And then as you get into the hobby or the habit, you know, people buy better pens and people buy better books and whatever. But that's not the important. The important is the relationship that you start developing with yourself.
Okay, so someone listening to this now and they're like, journaling seems like a cool thing for me to do. I'd like to sit with myself. I'd like to get to know myself better.
Yeah.
I like to have somewhere to put my feelings down, but where do I start? Is there like a website where you can get prompts or?
Yeah. So when I started, I've always been a journaler. I've always done the Dear Diary, talk about my feelings. But I remember, you know, especially nowadays, most people hit like 25, 24, 25, 26, and they go through the quarter life crisis. It's not the midlife crisis anymore. It's the quarter life crisis. And I was like, I don't know what I want and I don't know what to do. And is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? You know, all of these big existential questions. What really started this journey for me was finding self-discovery prompts. So go onto Pinterest, specifically Pinterest, but go onto Pinterest, go onto Instagram, and you can type it in and say self-discovery to discover yourself, or just say journal prompts or writing prompts. And usually people have created, it's such a big community and people have created all the hard work. All you have to do is say, this is a question that I would like to answer. And then you sit and then you just answer that question. And I did one a day for a good couple of months. And then I started only doing it one a week and then one a month, because you start knowing yourself better and better. And then it's like an onion. It's very layered, right? So you start with this is who I am. This is what I want to know about myself. These are my fears. These are my dreams. These are my memories that I want to remember. These are the, if I won the lottery, this is what I would buy. These sort of questions. But then it gets deeper and deeper. And then you start really finding out parts of yourself that you go, oh, I actually didn't realize that about myself, you know, and I think that's beautiful.
And is journaling all about finding yourself and exploring those inner thoughts, or can journaling be about something else? Because I've noticed on your TikToks that you have like a reading list.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
No,
as well.
100%. So yeah, 100%. So the journaling community is so vast. Another good adjective, meaning you know, such a wide variety. A lot of people do emotional journaling, as in the writing, where you do the prompts and the writing and the self-discovery. I also am a huge avid reader, right? So I like to monitor the different types of books that I read and the different types of stats. So the reading journal community, also very, very big, where people like to look at the stats and rate their books. And it's also a huge community where people compare different it doesn't even have to be, if they enjoyed the book or not. They're looking at the style of the book, the length of the book. Do they read more books physically, or do they read more books on an e-reader? So there's there's so many different. I also have a different type of journal that I use specifically just for note taking, where you just want to it's called mind dump. Dump as in tirarla basura. So like throw away, where you just like, oh, my brain has got so many things and I need to remember all the things and no. And you just write, okay, I'm just going to vomit all of the information that I need to remember onto this book, and it is not beautiful, and I just need to throw it out there. And it's just another way to clear the brain. So there are different types of journaling, and some of them is beautiful, and you take your time and you curate it and you make it wonderful with whatever. And sometimes it's just ugly, raw, authentic, and just to get rid of, so that your brain and your mental health is more at peace, which I think is another aspect of the journaling.
Yeah, I think that's definitely my style of journaling.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, yours is very
bullet points, scribbles,
100%, but
drawings.
it's very efficient.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, and I think there is a style for each person. Just going back to something you said then, obviously Aurelia is used to using vocabulary that is going to test her students. So like avid reader. There's other ways of saying an avid reader. But you also, before avid, you said huge. I'm a huge avid reader. Now, one really interesting thing with English is the order of our adjectives. Like we could not say I'm an avid huge reader.
No, that's very true.
That means that you're probably the one that is huge. No?
Yeah, no, that's very true. The order, it's one of those things that I actually hate teaching students, is how to remember the order of adjectives, because there is a method, right? I think it goes like opinion, shape, size, fact. I can't even remember. But there is an actual teaching method of how to teach students the order of adjectives. Do you remember off the top of your head?
No.
Yeah.
It just sounds right or wrong.
I know, 100%. For a native, it just sounds right or wrong. But there is an actual. I actually taught it about 3 weeks ago, and I have a note in my book where I'm like, this, and this. But when you're teaching, and I think this is a nice point to bring up for students, like you said, it sounds good. That's something that we have to teach students as well. It's not only book English; it has to be real English. You get that, you develop that English ear. What sounds good? There's an instinct to it, which I think is quite lovely when it comes to learning languages.
Yeah, I don't know if you found it with your students though. I told them that when they said, yeah, it just sounds good. I'm like, that's brilliant. It means you are learning. But now 100%. When I ask them why something is what it is, they just say because it sounds right. So they get away with not explaining the grammar. I'm like, it sounds right, but why does it sound right? Now explain the grammar to me.
But I think that's very true. There has to be that natural instinct, and there has to be a balance, between the instinctual, you know it, porque sí, you know it because you know it. But then as you get better at the language, you need that deeper understanding. So I say to them, right, let's analyze it. I know you got the answer right, and I'm so happy you got the answer right. But let's analyze why we got the answer right. And sometimes it's easy for them. They're like this, and this. And sometimes they're like, oh, I don't know. But let's see.
Yeah, and there's always a learning point to have from it as well. So going back to journaling, I want to give the viewers something to go away with, right?
Yeah.
So let's say they're listening to this now. Can they use journaling to improve their English writing? And if so, how? And what one piece of advice would you give them to get started? Like, this is my 3-step guide to get started in journaling to improve your English.
Okay. Right. So this is such a fantastic point, actually, especially because students struggle with writing in general in a different language, especially if it's not your native language. So this is a great hobby to start, right? So number one, you need to find your passion, as in you need to find that ganas, that want, that that need that this is what I want to start and this is what I want to do. So number one, find that inspiration. Number two, just get that pen and paper, whether you want a separate journal or a separate book. For me, that's the best. I like to have different journals for different aspects. So I would get a book, and I would then, number three, go onto Pinterest and start finding prompts, right? And then just do one a day, and it doesn't have to be a whole page. So the one that I did.
Let's give them their first prompt.
Okay.
Their first prompt. So I want people to go away from this podcast, pick up a pen and paper, find the Ganas, because they're going to have the inspiration because they've listened to us. And then I want them to pick up the pen and paper. And what is their prompt?
Okay. So the prompt that I did for myself, actually, yesterday was, what does my happiness look like at the moment? And well, for me as well, I was like, oh, shit, I don't know. So happiness does not have to be, if I won the lottery, it doesn't have to be anything big, but a moment of happiness could be anything. I have students that are studying their bachillerato, and they were like, oh, a moment of happiness would be having no exams and playing video games all day. Another student said their moment of happiness was waiting for the summer, going to the beach and having paella at the beach, right? So it doesn't have to be a long answer. Just start writing and be like, right, the question is, what does my happiness look like at the moment? And say, well, at the moment, because I am so stressed, maybe my idea of happiness is blah, 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 right? And then just 2 or 3 sentences. It doesn't have to be long, and it doesn't have to be a chore. A chore meaning like how do you say tarea? Work. It doesn't have to be hard work. It just has to be just a little something where you are present to yourself, 2 or 3 sentences, and that is enough. Ya está. Suficiente. That's it.
Okay. And so if anyone is wanting to get into journaling and they like that prompt and they want to start by writing what is happiness for them in this moment, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're happy sharing your happiness with us, your reason why, put it in the comments and we will go down there, and it'd be nice to share that. What is the thing that's making us happy in this moment? What does happiness look like to everyone at this moment in time? Because there are going to be so many different versions of happiness.
100%.
What makes me happy might not make someone else happy. So
well,
that could be quite a cool experiment.
Let's start with you. What is your idea of happiness? What does happiness look like for you at the moment, Ant?
It's a deep question.
Yeah.
It's a really deep question because obviously there's a lot going on in my life at the moment, and it's a lot of things for the future, building for the future. So obviously it would be lovely to say, like, what does happiness look like at the moment? Well, it looks like I'm going to be a dad and I'm going to be, but that's future happiness. The question was, what does happiness look like for you at this moment in time?
Yes. Okay. But let's break that down because there is space there. So yes, it doesn't have to be future orientated, but it could be something that you are doing now that preempts that future thing. For example, like you said, you have a baby on the way, which means that you are now busy preparing your baby room. That is such a beautiful thing to like be present to, that you go like, I mean, how many times in one's life is someone going to prepare a baby room, right? Like this is the first time this has ever happened for you. This is, it's the trips to IKEA to decide the furniture. Are we going to paint the walls?
Happiness.
No, I mean, for me, that would be. So like there must be something that's present at the moment that might be preemptive to the future. It doesn't have to be future orientated, but is there something, you also in your new house, maybe it is that lovely cup of coffee in the morning,
No, I think it's the planning and building right now for a future for my daughter to leave that legacy. So, doing these podcasts, growing Daway, that's all happiness for me at this moment in time. But I think as we go through life, it changes.
100%.
So it's a really good prompt to put the date at the top of your page,
Yes.
write what happiness looks like to you at this moment in time, and then revisit it in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
A year's
But
time.
that's what's beautiful about language, because just because you're doing it in English, I mean, whether you are doing it in English or doing it in Spanish, actually, I need to be improving my Spanish. So I should be starting to find prompts in Spanish to do the same thing, to improve my writing as well. It's such a muscle. What is muscle in Spanish? Muslo?
Musculo.
Musculo. It's such a muscle to be pushing your because it's not only about thinking. There's a creative aspect of you changing the way that you think, right? So you could look at the question analytically, but there's also a creative way of looking at that question, which builds as you go into the writing and sitting with yourself more and more. And obviously, so just something that I want to mention to anyone that's listening. There are so many different types of questions and so many different types of journals, but most people just do it in their head, right? They don't write it down. And there's no right or wrong way to do journaling, and there's no right or wrong way to answer a question. However, if you put it in your head, it's gone. You are not going to remember it in 2 days, let alone in 2 years, right? So the big key piece of advice is write it down. Like Anthony said, there's the word legacy. Everything that you write down is creating the legacy of who you are, whether you are doing it for your child or doing it for the version of you 10 years from now, right? Don't hide from doing the work of sitting down and writing, whether it's in English or in Spanish or in Chinese or in Russian, right? Just sit down, do the journaling or do the writing, and you will see an evolution of self.
Mm-hmm. And I think that tip can be used for anything. If people are listening to this and they're on a language learning journey, it's just do something, just start. There's so many ways, and everyone's going to try and sell you the perfect way to learn a language, and this is the only way. We're guilty of using it in Daway, our hooks.
100%.
But the real secret is that there is no secret. Just start.
Exactly.
Just do something.
Exactly it. But that's what I love about what you've started here with this podcast, with this series, where we're talking to other teachers and people from other places. There should be no gatekeeping. It's not about you selling the product or selling English. It should just be about creating that English community, creating that love of learning, which I think is, I'm so excited to see how this podcast continues. And I hope you get lots and lots of great new interviewees.
Yeah, me too, because it's showing another part of English teaching and learning. We're just having real conversations and breaking down bits of vocab and grammar as we're going, but we're also giving insights into how we work. Just now, when at the beginning of the show, where we weren't 100% sure what the past of dive was, that's so fine. True. We're not 100% perfect, and I think that's a real key for people to see that, they look at teachers and think that we know absolutely everything, whereas we're on a learning journey as well.
Exactly. 100%. That's another thing that I love about teaching, is doing that. And I try to make it as, don't confuse like being human with being incompetent, because I try very hard not to be an incompetent teacher, but I try to humanize the aspect of learning. So that's something that I find very important in the classroom. I put a lot of pressure on my students, as in go, but that doesn't translate to, I don't care if in the activity you get 3 wrong or you get 10 wrong. It's not about how much you have correct or incorrect. It's how much effort you put into it. So humanizing, and make it about the love of learning, not about the love of how many answers you got correct, Yeah.
If someone's got the ganas to learn English, they will learn English. It doesn't matter how fast or slow a learner they are, they will learn it because they've got the enthusiasm there for something. And that goes with anything in life, not just with English. But English it's such an important tool for everyone to have in their toolbox. we're lucky to be a big part of people's learning journey when it comes to learning English.
Very true.
So as we move on to the next part of the show,
Yeah.
or before we move on, sorry, is there any last thing you would like to leave the audience with in regards to German?
No, the main thing is like we mentioned before, it's start with what you have, where you are, with what you know, right? It's not about the end product. It's about seeing and meeting yourself where you are now. So, like I said, pen and paper and a chair, and then sit down with yourself, and everything else will come with time.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, Aurelia is in charge of our podcasts, which go out on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, etc., and loads of other streaming services. So a quick promotion that I'm going to give to Aurelia is that you need to go and subscribe to Daway's podcast so that you can listen to her every Thursday, because the episodes that Aurelia puts out, you get a huge range of different topics. I've noticed that you're very seasonal as well. So if it's we have Valentine's Day coming up. Is the next episode Valentine's Day by any chance? Yeah. Christmas, there's Christmas themed ones. Halloween, there's Halloween themed ones.
100%,
but also she ranges the level of the episodes. And Aurelia is probably one of the best people I know that can grade her vocabulary for each level. So she can go from talking to infants, where it's red, blue, that's this, to a C1 class in the space of an hour. So it's really worth you going in, listening to a lot of the episodes. And I think in the title of the episodes, you normally put like the level that it's aimed at. So if you know that you're a B1, then try listening to the B1 episodes, but also don't be scared of listening
100%.
to the B2 or C1 episodes as well, purely because Aurelia speaks more Spanglish than I do. So
I speak very Spanglish.
During the episode, she is translating everything as she goes, random words here and there, so you can get the gist of the episode. And like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, you're just training your ear. And that's all it is. Just listen, train that ear. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, wow, a month ago I wasn't understanding this much of Aurelia's podcast, but now I am understanding a lot more. So obviously I will promote that one for you.
Thank you so much.
If people wanted to follow your journaling journey, so to speak, where can they follow you?
I'm definitely active on TikTok. I'm trying to be brave. It's my new thing. I want to consume less and create more. So I'm trying to be brave and put more stuff on TikTok as well as Instagram. Those are my two main areas that I tend to share and play with my audience.
So Aurelia's TikTok is intentionally being, which is on the bottom of the screen.
Thank you.
Now, and then her Instagram is Aurelia_intentional being. And you can find loads of her videos that she does with her beautiful journals. They're super artistic. Makes me very jealous of your artistic skills. And that is why you're going to be in charge of the next workshop that we have coming up, which is about art.
I've already been dreaming about what I'm going to do for the next workshop. But actually, just one thing to maybe end the podcast with, when we see other people creating creative stuff, whether it's painting or journaling or whatever, it is a muscle, and it's something that I've forgotten. And the more that you step into that creative space, whether it's creating things online or using Canva or whatever, it does get easier with time. And I'm finding that the more I do it, the more I like to use the verb play. I just want to have the space to play, and experiment and see what works. And it doesn't matter if it looks good or bad. It's just about playing. And as adults, we forget this. So if anybody goes onto like any of my TikToks or on my Instagram or something. There's nothing special about it. It's just I've given myself permission to play, and that's it, really.
And we all need to give ourselves more permission to play.
I agree.
So, as you know, at the end of every podcast, I like to ask the guest to recommend someone else to come onto the show to kind of keep that networking effect that we have going, and to obviously keep this series of real life, real English podcast going. So have you thought of someone that you would like us to invite onto the show?
Yes, actually, two people that are in my teaching career that I have followed and admired for a very long time. The first one is Ben on YouTube. His page on YouTube is called To The Point English with Ben. He does a lot of content on exam preparation. And the next one is on Instagram, this guy called John. It's John plus English. He used to be called Cork English Teacher, with lots and lots of content online on Instagram on English vocabulary and grammar and everything about English. And those two people I think are fantastic, and I highly recommend that you check them out, and maybe let's see if we can get them on the show.
Yeah, we'll tag them in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to check out their content, they can go there as well. So
lovely.
Thank you very much, Aurelia. That was
thank you for having me.
A very interesting topic. It got deep. We were talking about happiness and what makes us happy, etc. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you all in the next one.
Thank you, and bye, everyone.
Catch you later.
Si disfrutó de este episodio y quieres llevar tus conocimientos de inglés al siguiente nivel, te invitamos a todos nuestros cursos online, desde A2 hasta C1, que incluyen un examen oficial de Language Share que puedes realizar desde la comodidad de tu casa y que es aceptado a nivel mundial. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a cambiar su vida. Visita ahora Daway.es y realiza nuestro test de nivel interactivo de manera gratuita.